Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Happy Hour interview. I'm your host for this week, Community Manager Jared Huckaby. Now if you've never seen Happy Hour is our regular Friday show where we do all kinds of things. We explore game development. Most recently we had Calix Renault creating a basketball mechanic for use inside the Javelin. We look at old games throughout our history in the Happy Hour Museum. And of course we do the Happy Hour interview where we have some members from the CIG development team sit down and answer your questions. Now joining us today are members from our LA Ship Art and Tech team. We're going to go around the table and introduce ourselves. Why don't we start there on the end there?
Yep. Hi everyone, I'm Matt Sherman, technical designer here at the Los Angeles studio.
How you doing?
Doing well.
Yeah.
I'm Matt Intrieri, a principal ship technical artist, and I work on automation and the ship pipeline in general, and then I get involved in specific ship tech.
All right. And?
Hi, I'm Patrick Salerno, tech artist here. I mainly do ship destruction, optimization, and setup functionality, all sorts of stuff.
Gotcha. So we got Matt, and Pat.
Correct.
Matt, Pat. No, never mind. We have this nice harmony thing going on in our audio test today. So if you've never seen Happy Hour before, we do take questions live throughout the course of the show. You can, of course, watch this broadcast on YouTube and Twitch. We only take questions from our Twitch broadcast and Spectrum. Now, Spectrum is our own online communications platform. You can find it at robertspaceindustries.com if you're a backer of the project. So you can go there, submit your questions there, and of course, please preface your question with the word question in capital letters and brackets. It's going to help me dig it out from the detritus here with all the other conversation that goes on. So right off the bat, let's go ahead and go around the table and talk a little bit about what you do for Star Citizen. We'll start with you this time, Pat.
All right. For the most part, I've been here 2 or 3 years now, I think, and I've been mainly focused with Matt here on spaceships and in general. So what happens is after the modelers are done with the ship, I get it and I start to do the setup on it for, say, Matt here. And so I'll start trying to break off wings for him to tell like balance and all sorts of, what's happening with the features. Is everything working? Can a character get in a ship? Push buttons, look at stuff, sitting there, is he twitching and spazzing off into space? So on and so forth. After I'm sort of done with that, I also do general setup tasks like lights and destruction. I work on the shader and I get the ship to deform and melt and all sorts of fun stuff. But for the most part, I act as support for kind of all the teams and try and make sure that no one's blocked and everything works.
So basically, after many ship artists spend weeks and weeks making the ship look as beautiful as possible, you get your hands on it and just tear it apart.
And I can't wait. Exactly. I watch him modeling it for a while, and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait. Can I rip that off? Can I rip that off? Are you getting ready for me to tear a hole through there? Exactly.
Really? So you actually, during the process, you think about where you're going to rip certain things off and stuff?
Yeah. During the different phases of our process, mainly in the white box sort of concept phase, we try and work out the major components areas of the ship that are actually going to blow off. Later on down the line, as it's modeled, as it's working, we may see a couple more pieces here and there that we may see that can go, but we're obviously, we want to keep performance in mind when we're ripping and tearing things off the ship. So, Matt keeps me in check.
And Matt, besides keeping him in check, what do you do for Star Citizen?
That's like 50% of my job is that. But so beyond tools for the global team, which I help service all the ships and the environment art people who are all working in 3D Studio Max. We are part of the ship pipeline, the tech art team of myself and Pat. Help out the UK team, the Austin team, and the US team with every ship that comes through the pipeline. So I'll know what ships are coming up, and I'll schedule myself or Pat to take on the challenges of that ship. And I oversee all aspects of the ship to make sure it's up to a certain standard of completion, given our current tech that is incoming all the time. So it's always a moving target. We're trying to, we've always had the vision of where we're going, and here we are, and what we can do today, and we put that in there and make it up to spec.
Gotcha. And when you first started, you were a tools programmer, if I remember correctly, right?
Yes.
What's a tools programmer do?
Well, tools, it's mainly automation. I create tools that deal with materials, with texturing, with the communication between our art program and the CryEngine, that was a big step, was creating tools that actually wrote to the engine and created XML, skinning processes, the destruction processes, and effects. So every aspect of ship creation, I've done some tools for, and those can also be used sometimes for the environments as well.
So you're a big part of why development gets faster as things go on. Why the rate at which we can make things that first year isn't quite what we can do the second year, isn't quite what we can do the third year. You're a big part of making those tools that automate the original processes and make them faster.
That's right, yeah. Originally we were hand editing XML quite a bit, and it was a very confusing process. And my goal was to make things more art driven. So as artists were creating these ships, and they could just push a button and it would export that data right to the engine, as opposed to going to the XML, hand editing everything, and it's an example.
Well, that's everybody. So Matt Sherman, technical designer. What does a technical designer do?
So for what I do specifically, I make ships. So I come up with the high-level concept after our kickoff meetings. Just work out the whole design, where we want it to fit gameplay-wise, what we want it to sort of, what kind of role we want it to do in the universe, how we want it to sort of stack up against other ships, and then also sorting out, okay, well, what are all the other problems we're going to cause by adding this ship? So what other tech debt would we have to clear, or have we already cleared that's going to make this ship possible? What of our new tech and features can we try and implement in to try and create new gameplay? So a lot of experimental stuff, and then sort of just taking all the different pieces as they come in from the artists, from audio, from Matt and Pat, during the different handoffs, during the different stages of the pipeline, to taking something from just a 2-page design brief and 3 pieces of concept art to a fully built-out, functioning game asset that can burn and crash.
So when you say you make spaceships, you're talking about all the pen and paper stuff, how they work.
Yeah.
And what their role is going to be.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So again, we are taking questions live from our Twitch chat and our Spectrum chat. My compatriot in arms, Tyler Whitkin, is taking your questions now and feeding them to me on our lovely little iPad here. He says right off the bat, there's so many Cutlass questions. I do want to tell you that we've got a number of Cutlass features coming up for future episodes, ATV, happy hour, stuff like that. So we're going to save most of the Cutlass stuff for other broadcasts that are dedicated to it, but most recently we've done most of our work on the Buccaneer was here. I know you guys did a lot of work on the Prospector recently and stuff like that. So, and then of course, just overall ship pipeline stuff. So right off the bat, we have a question. It says, how much pre-production planning goes into making a ship? Do all various disciplines working on the ship have to have countless meetings? How many meetings are we?
Not countless meetings, but we do have these review gates where we look at the design and call out any potential technical challenge that a ship might have. Like, say, the Prospector has a mining functionality, or these, issues like, say, the Caterpillar had all these doors that opened, and that was a great concern because of performance, and we spent a lot of time doing optimization to achieve good frame rate. So things like that.
Okay. Next question here is, what is your favorite type of ship to work on and why? So we'll go around the table on this one.
For me, kind of like the smaller to mid-sized craft, because it's enough to build out where they can have a bunch of different gameplay potential to it. We can explore some different options with it in sort of like the infinite timeline of things, where we can build it to be this thing now first, but then potentially go to other options later. But without being such a behemoth ship where it's like, okay, I'll make this ship this year, for just the amount of work and detailing that goes into anything.
For me, it seems to be I get most satisfaction out of the bigger ships, like the Caterpillar, when you drop down those doors and the vista is just out there and you're standing there in gravity looking at this amazing view, and then we get to blow them up too. So I have a lot of fun with the bigger ships. I'm looking forward to working on the capital ships, and we're working really hard on I won't go into detail on it, but the gravity, inside gravity, and putting little ships and bigger ships and all this stuff. So, we're going to be delivering some cool stuff for 3.0.
Yeah, the zone system is one of the most impressive achievements for me personally with Star Citizen. The ability to put a ship inside another ship and be able to transition seamlessly from, I imagine that makes for quite a number of challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our engineers working on that, like Chris Rain, he's specifically just has done an amazing job with the zone systems and local grids.
Patrick, what's your favorite type of ship to work on?
Size and type doesn't matter as much as how many pieces I get to blow off of it. That's kind of, honestly, yeah, that's pretty much it. When I look at a ship, the first thing I think of is this is going to be so fun to tear apart. I'm looking for all sorts of little flaps and winglets and panels. Does this animate? Oh, can I rip that off too? Where are the areas that are going to show cool damage? As a player, what are you going to see? What's the damage going to look like when it's landed and you want to repair it? What's it going to look like in space? Which is the coolest ship that just looks awesome when it's blowing up and parts are exploding and there's fire going off. Like that, to me, that's kind of it. I know that's really vague and totally not specific.
But we have to balance the amount of debris that can fall off a ship with the optimization. Each separate mesh costs a certain amount of draw calls, so we have to kind of keep it in check.
Yeah, exactly.
And a draw call is the CPU calling to the graphics processor.
Yeah, it's the number of passes on a certain mesh. And if you say you have 10 draw calls on a hull and you start to break it in half, now you have 20 draw calls. You break it off again, you have 30 draw calls. It's not exactly that way, but you can kind of think of it like that.
I don't know why, something in what you said made me think of the Enterprise in Star Trek 3 when it explodes in the front half of the front half of the saucer explodes, and just the Enterprise. Because you'd think it'd go with the engines. You'd think a self-destruct would start with the engines, the nacelle, but for some reason in Star Trek 3, it's the front half of the saucer that explodes. But man, did it look cool though.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, all right. Next question. How well will the damage model scale up for significantly larger ships, like capital ships?
Very well. The new UV2 shader damage model will work perfectly for the larger ships as it does for the smaller ships. I think the textile density will be a little less. So when we get to them, we're going to maybe invest more resources into the bigger ships, but we're not there yet. So we'll find out. But the actual setup is very similar across all ships.
You don't want to tackle an Idris all by yourself. Yeah, that'd take a while.
I guess. Well, yeah, we handle the outside of the ship mainly, and the modelers are really doing the insides. We do some internal work for like lighting and whatnot, and these damage states and things. But for destruction, we're mainly concerned with the exterior at this point.
Yeah. I mainly just worry about what details are underneath the exterior surface of the ship, like geometry, girders, wires, sort of palms. So you can't see through areas you're not supposed to. But otherwise, the interiors themselves are usually modeled and lit by the artists themselves.
All right. Next question says, will we have the option to switch styles of radars between ships as we prefer? Example, the Vanguard has a 3D sphere radar. Could I make it have a 2D radar like the Buccaneer?
So I'm not actually sure if we're going to have that be sort of a pervasive thing that you're swapping out based on manufacturer, but I mean just general improvements to readability, usability for any of our HUD elements is definitely something that we're looking at, and also making sure that each manufacturer does have their own sort of distinct style. So like for the Vanguard, if we added an alternate toggle for it, we would need to make sure that alternate appearance is still in the Aegis style and not just saying, hey, let's take what may be on a Drake ship or what may be on an RSI ship and just throw it on the Vanguard. It's making sure, is this an Aegis 2D radar, is this an Aegis 3D radar, and how those individual ships get chosen for that presentation.
We've talked in the past, and I'm talking like a year ago, 2 years ago, about exploring the opportunity to have, you know, the on-screen HUD and everything be a component, you know, be a component that you can replace in a ship. You know, it's obviously we're still building out the initial components here, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. It's something we can still look into. We can still explore later down the line.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, you know, building that foundation out first, where once, because one of the things that we've been using a lot more in the past year or so is this internal tool we have called Data Forge, just for making authoring so much of this content a lot easier and a lot faster. And using something like that to then, okay, now we can much more easily make these different kind of screen records to say, this is what this ship's HUD is, this is what the interface is going to be, but it's just getting that foundation to say, okay, we could build any HUD for any ship on any panel setup in very little time. Once we get to that point, that's really when we can start saying, all right, what are some of the ways that we can play with this and make something really cool and make something different from that foundation set?
I know Chris is really interested in ship customization, but we think what we'll do is we'll probably establish the ships as designed first off, and then allow for things like that later. One of the efforts going on right now is the, you've heard of Item 2.0.
Have we mentioned Item 2.0
Has anybody,
at all?
is this
I don't
news?
think so.
Is this news? Item 2.0 can be divided into several categories. There's Seat 2.0, there's Turret 2.0, there's Landing Gear 2.0. But what we're focusing on right now is the seats. And what that means for the cockpits is that the joysticks and the MFD monitors are going to start to become one object, or at least is separate from the ship, that can be plugged in. And that's actually just starting right now. So it opens the door to customization and swappability of interiors down the road.
Saw a little bit of that in the ATV yesterday, actually, when you saw the Cutlass cockpit completely, the cockpit setup completely removed.
Yeah, and that's very much, even though it's still sort of like one of those on the cusp ships of, some of it'll be set before all of Item 2.0 is in, some of it, like, there's still going to be other aspects of Item 2.0 that'll be layered in over time, but just making sure that we're building it to take advantage of these new systems as soon as they come online. So, you know, like you mentioned, it's like, it's its own seat item. So on that infinite timeline, cool, we get to a point where now we could offer different seats. Now you can change that out much more easily and as a preset, you know, thing, as opposed to
like the Aurora LX had the leather. The LX and the LN. Are you going on record that it's pleather?
Pleather?
It's pleather, it's not real leather?
Was it Corinthian leather or pleather?
It's real leather, people. Send your complaints to Matthew Intrieri, care of Five Grand Games.
Not my call. I have nothing to do.
Speaking of the Aurora, the next question is, what new technologies and parts will make up the new Aurora model? As far as new damage states, what have you done for the new Aurora?
Well, it's being worked on. Elwin's still got it in his hands, but he'll be handing that off, and then it'll actually be ready for the new damage system. So everything you've seen with all the new melting, wearing, underlying stuff, he's working out some kinks in it to make sure that there's room for actual equipment that we're putting in, the physical space for it. So physically it's being modified to just sort of fit our new systems, and it'll be a total upgrade. So same ship, but it'll look much better all around, you know.
And in the near future, all ships are going to receive a lighting upgrade. We've just, Chad Zamzo has developed a thing called light groups. And if you imagine the Caterpillar, it's got 1,000 lights inside of it. And what these light groups do is they kind of record the place and the settings of each light and reduce it all down to one entity. And we have far more control over animation of lighting and light states. So we're going to be doing a pass. First off, for 3.0, we're going to do a pass where it's just optimizing and reducing the number of entities, which will increase performance. But post 3.0, we're going to be adding some really cool lighting effects like startup sequences and flickering of lights on the wings of ships. So I'm very excited about the lighting possibilities.
Nathan Jersey is working on a bit of that.
He's been doing some prototype work. Looks amazing.
Yeah, some of that you can see on this week's Citizens of the Stars that aired on Monday. Some of Nathan's current work on prototyping the internal lighting stuff for that. All right. So next question, whatever came of the prototype screens in last year's Caterpillar ship-shape video? Have they come farther? Now this was a video within ATV that we did with Calix, who's not here at the table right now, but you know, I'm going to go ahead and answer this just for Calix here. Just like we do 40, 50, 60 different concept images when we're designing the outside of a ship, we do concepts for internal systems. That was a concept for a particular internal system that Calix was working on. It was all done up in Flowgraph, which if you saw the last happy hour game dev, you got to see Calix working in Flowgraph. It's not a finished, a final approved system or whatnot. It was something that he was exploring at that time. We do that quite often. There's lots of little systems that we start to work on, you know, and in a vacuum they may work, but when you have to put them into the game with the 200 other systems, the 300 other systems, you know, they may cause all kinds of trouble and stuff. So no progress on that at this time.
Well, although just to also start commenting on that, because I know he, even when he popped on, was it Baron's stream on Wednesday for a few minutes, he mentioned he's working on the interaction systems, and so he's definitely still working on things in that nature, but like Jared was explaining, it's just making sure that whatever we build, you know, you can build a really crazy prototype that makes any multiplayer server you run it on collapse. Yeah. And so it's just making sure that it's always viable and it's always something that is stable enough for the crazy scope that the persistent universe is going to end up attaining.
All right, here's an interesting question. I actually want to know the answer to this one. Will damage states be different for when you are flying within atmosphere?
Have we really thought of?
Simple answer is no. When you break off, what happens when you break off a wing, say, is we fire these squibs and it distorts the UV2s and creates an alpha channel, so you get kind of an uneven surface. And then we fire some special effects. That's the current state of the damage tech. That's not going to change in atmosphere, other than there will be gravity and turbulence. So the physics will change.
But different weapons do have different weapon effects when they hit. Like a bullet will tear through the metal a bit more than, say, a laser, which will burn through the paint but not actually tear through the metal. So maybe there's some kind of damage inflicted via atmosphere that has a different visual effect. I'm just saying that could be something that's done. You know?
We're going to be working on a debris 2.0. And what that means is we're probably going to take more into account the torque of a percussive thing, like ammo hits at a certain vector, and that'll start to shear off the wing, and it'll be more physically accurate. Basically, we're just right now we give an impulse to the debris, and it doesn't really matter where we shot it from. It just kind of always randomly sort of pops off in this cone of that we establish through our XML.
So still early days in atmospheric damage.
Yeah. Let's say that.
Yeah. What? Did Discolando do anything in honor of Billy D. Williams' birthday this week?
I don't know.
Yes, I set up a shrine in my house with little candles, and I just sent him a happy birthday tweet. He didn't respond.
That's disappointing.
Why is that in
You
there?
should have set up the shrine then. He may have responded.
All right, next question. How do you plan to let ramps and loading bays, especially the likes of the Carrack and the Aquila, work in rough terrain?
Oh, that's interesting, because this is a Calix question. He did some prototypes for variable terrain where, so we have the idea of springy landing gear, and along with that system, it's going to take into account the cargo doors and whatnot. So we're thinking hard about uneven terrain and how that would actually work. Yeah. And we want to keep the ship basically level. But the landing gears and things are going to fall into crevices, and the door is going to open, and the ladder is going to open to a certain amount. So,
the chances are you're not going to see the final implementation of whatever that answer is in 3.0. It's going to be something that evolves just like anything else.
Yeah, it presents just immediately a lot of challenges, because for tracking the balance of the ship, especially if we get into larger and larger ships. Now for something smaller, you'll probably have better luck, because you're also going to probably find something that's almost more inherently flat to the shape of your ship. But yeah, like if you start getting to, say you're bringing a Caterpillar down, even with any different landing gear compression, there's only so far below those landing gear will still extend, and so you'll still need to find as big, clear, and flat of a tract as possible, but you won't get screwed over by there being a little bit of variation in that. So
It'll be something you'll have to consider when picking your landing spots.
exactly, yeah.
So, all right. Any information on a potential pass on the Gray Cat buggy, additional damage states, etc.? People are going to load up their Gray Cat buggies in their ships and take them down planet side. So do you have to do damage states for a Gray Cat then?
It's called Melt It for a Dragonfly.
Oh, yeah.
With the Drake sale ongoing now.
We'll definitely need UV2s at the very least. Don't know about.
They don't currently.
Right,
It's
that's
still
what I
the
mean.
old style damage.
Yeah.
If anything, I don't know if anything falls off this ship.
Yeah,
or
that's
the-
what
the
I don't
buggy.
think it like breaks
so
apart.
small,
Anyway.
it
Yeah, I don't
just-
think it breaks
It just
apart
kind
in a
of
particular way.
explodes, yeah, in a fireball.
Doesn't mean it
That's
can't
how it
burn.
works. That's how it works in ArcCorp right now.
Doesn't mean it can't burn and melt through it, but I don't think there'd be
Yeah.
much sort of like interesting geo to actually fly off it. But I mean, what UV2s and then set that up, change damage shader, and get that activated.
Yeah,
blah 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 blah. You know?
We would need to steal an artist or do it ourselves where we put the internals into a structure, so once you kind of can see into the body, you can see something.
That's
so
part of the
there's-
thing we come across is a lot of the older ships when we were doing damage conversions, they didn't have really much space between the exterior and the interior, so you couldn't really fit cool mechanical structures between the body. You couldn't even fit sometimes like a plane that shows the sort of damaged palm. So as these ships are being redesigned for the new damage systems, all that stuff is being taken into account. So maybe the Gray Cat will pick it up.
Well, as of right now, you can't actually spawn a Gray Cat in the persistent universe. So I think that has to come first.
Right,
so
right, right.
Until
Baby steps,
Until
one
somebody
step
else
at a
does
time.
that, you don't have to worry about it.
All right.
Let's see. For Pat and Matt S., can you walk us through a critical chain reaction ship destruction? What is the goal for how that would work mechanically and visually?
Okay.
I guess for like an alpha
the,
strike
the full
destruction?
systemic damage system. I kind of put a list together of, at the beginning of the year of what we wanted to achieve for damage and talk to design about this. So first off, we want the dogfighting experience to be really good, where you have indication of where you're getting hit from and effects going off in the interior, and you kind of get the warning that you're about to go critical, and you have some time to get out of your seat and start to repair things. We're going to add radial damage to missiles, and the difficulty there is a zone inside the ship and a zone in space, and the radial damage has to affect interior components in order to hurt them. So once that is established, we will add damage to the interior components. They'll have their own radiuses, which they influence also if they explode, and they can also send feedback on the pipes, and pipes will expend heat, and then your overall ship performance will decrease based on these factors, and if enough critical systems explode, you'll achieve a ship destruction.
Yeah.
But we do want to allow for the possibility you can break a ship in half without blowing it up.
Yeah.
So if you start to shoot the hull and you're not hitting any critical system, you could probably snap it in half.
Yeah, and also a lot of that is going to play into where the different components live inside of a ship, where I know like the Vanguard was very much built initially on its just almost redundant setup, where it would have a power plant and a cooler inside each of its main housings on separate sides of the ship. So yeah, you've shorn off one half of the ship, but it still has all those functional components where it can keep flying even if the other half went critical. Whereas something that, say, it has two power plants, but they're right next to each other, and then one of those power plants takes critical damage, it detonates, it does its explosion radius. Well, it's right next to the second power plant, so even though that power plant may not have taken any damage, if the first power plant criticals hard enough, that one's going to go along with it, and to try and create some of these more just systemically occurring events for this kind of critical damage, but also make sure it's not something where how you critically damage and blow up a ship isn't how you critically damage and blow up every single ship. So it's, oh, I've got this one gameplay routine down set. No, it's I've got that down set for the Hornet or for the Constellation, but I'm still learning for all these other ships that give me trouble.
And we've also spoken about as your ship takes damage, and they said the captain would assign tasks to repair certain aspects of the ship, adding gameplay for the passengers. So we're very concerned about occupying the passengers with things to do. So we talked about fighting fires and repairing and adding fuses to components where you would have this kind of almost mini game where you're repairing the component itself.
I imagine that would extend the time to kill on these larger ships quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's definitely one of the goals, where it's, especially once we get some of the Shield 2.0, Vitam 2.0 in, there's a lot that'll be going on with that, where even just your basic Shield operator guy is going to have a lot to do in terms of just doubling or tripling the longevity of your ship by them being dedicated to that role. But then, you know, like Matt was saying, if one of those components gets fried and you've still got someone else on the ship, they may be the one running back. It's like, okay, shield generator 2 is broken, find that panel, open that up, there's the broken fuse, grab the replacement, get that stuffed in, you know, power cycle that shield generator, and pray it's not gonna take too long before you've taken even more damage.
And then beyond that, if you think about a ship as a derelict that you might find in space, it's going to be pre-damaged, you're going to come across it, you might harvest it for components, you might strip the metals to store the alloy to create other things, or you might be able to repair that ship and fly it out of there. So we're looking at all these kind of from dogfighting to destruction, to post-destruction, and being derelict, this whole lifespan of a ship.
Yeah.
How excited are you right now?
I'm so excited. They're just talking, and I just see like explosions rippling down a ship and particles flying and stuff. I totally what?
Half the players,
where are we going?
Half the players trying to see your work, the other half of the players trying not to see your work.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Let's see, Matt, it doesn't say which one, so what is your favoritist source of inspiration for ships that you're designing? I guess that's you.
Okay, favorite source?
Favoritist source.
Wow.
Starship Troopers. No, just kidding.
No, I actually really love Aliens. I mean, that's
Aliens?
always been the Alien franchise has been one of my longtime favorite sci-fi IPs. Like the Sulaco, the Cheyenne dropship. So, and while the Nostromo is amazing from Alien, it's like, okay, that was just the one ship then, but then just where they took it from in Aliens and then built the expanded universe of it. Because I like when I was growing up, I was reading all of the like the Dark Horse Aliens comics, where they go into all the other weird ships that never get shown or mentioned once on any of the movies. But it's just a really cool aesthetic to them, where it's like, yes, this is bare bones because space is a death trap.
You might be the only one old enough to remember. Do you ever see a series of books by Stuart Crawley? It was called Space 2000. It was the Terran Trade Association, the Confederation. It was all books published in the late 70s. It was all just crazy LSD spaceship art. And I used to sit in the library,
I've actually
7 years
seen
old,
those
8
books.
years old, just sit in the library, just looking at these LSD spaceships that were every color of the rainbow.
I was an Asimov guy myself.
Well, I still have those books.
All 3 rules of robots are wrong.
Stuart Crawley books. Look them up.
Don't allow AI.
Some crazy stuff. All right, next question. Are you planning to apply parallax occlusion mapping to the underlying components of a damaged ship?
They already do.
Oh,
Yep. Already done. Did it. Basically, there's 2 parts to the underlying geo. So you've got the exterior of the surface of the ship, and then you've got either damaged palms, which are the parallax occlusion maps, and those are a single plane that look like 3D geo due to how the textures are. And then you've got the actual geometry where you have space. So if a wing is actually thick enough to have, say, the skeletal ribbing as you go through, and then you have a palm under that. That way, when you shoot the ship, you can still see through it. But yeah, we combine both techniques with that. So we got palms all over the ship to do your rivets and your insets and all sorts of cool stuff that we don't have to carve into the geo. And then we use it for the damage too, because why not? It looks awesome, and it actually simplifies the process because you don't have to model a full set of geo to have it looks like geo at a glance. It's all extruded looking and such, so it's great tech.
I wish we could actually model the full ribbing of a ship, like build it like
Me too.
as like you'd see it in a a real construction of a spaceship, but it's too expensive to draw all that when you're not seeing it.
Yeah. All right. A lot of people are complimenting the hell out of your beard.
Oh, really?
Whose
Which
beard?
one?
I don't know. It's
There's
just,
3 of us.
Thanks.
Probably
Tyler
your
Wickett
beard.
is feeding me the
Maybe we
questions. going on.
combine our beards together.
I don't know. This is my 3.0 beard. I'm not shaving until 3.0 is out.
Okay.
So
Oh wow.
we'll see how that goes. Let's see. That wasn't a question. In fiction, Matt Sherman. If you had to describe working for Drake in one word, what would it be? That's because of the ATV summit yesterday. You were Matt S. Drake, ship designer. What's it like working for Drake, Matt?
Unrestricted.
Ooh.
Yeah, you asked for one word.
They did ask for one word. All right. What determinations are made when deciding where to draw the line on ship destructibility, taking into account balancing the visual spectacle against system performance?
Pretty much
just
what it
talked
is.
about that.
The biggest consideration is how the interiors will eventually be split. We can't just split at any point or create holes in the hull. We have to think about eventually when we split the ship, we're not going to disappear the interior, which is a kind of a cheat right now to get around the physics issues that we currently have. Like what we want to do is big capital ship, you break it in half. If this has the gravity generator and power, it should still have gravity where this will lose gravity. But right now, it's all one big physics grid for a ship. So Chris Rain is going to be working on multi-physics grids per ship.
Yeah, and then anything you obviously think about performance-wise, but you also think that's probably going to blow off. You look at a piece and it structurally doesn't look like it's going to take a huge cane around. At some point, that piece is going to tear off. So we try and pick and choose pieces and add to gameplay too. Like that's the first thing you say, like intakes, right? When I'm breaking things off for say Matt Sherman. So we'll break off intakes, break off wings. We'll see how that affects how it plays, and then I'll be like, well, what's left? Is there anything cool? There's only a few pieces breaking off. Anything aesthetically appealing, easily detachable, that's not going to overload everyone's computers. So that's kind of my process.
And one of the features I'm asking for is especially on the big capital ships where you're going to have multiple layers of rooms and they may not line up perfectly on a bulkhead. We want to have the ability to swap the interior for, say, a split room version. So imagine the Titanic breaking apart and you see a bit of a room with some mess coming out and people falling out and screams and smoke and fire and all this stuff. So that's kind of where I'd like to head.
I'd like to see that in atmosphere and watch people falling out and let gravity take them.
You're a cruel man.
It's because it's from living with toast. It's having an effect. All right. What new tech coming online for ships excites you the most?
Probably just the MacGuffin umbrella of item 2.0 because it's well, we can't do that until we get this 2.0 stuff online. Well, we can't do that until we get 2.0. So just all the knock-on effects that it's going to bring in terms of really just fleshing out gameplay and opening up a lot of the possibilities that are just all right, these are our items on the checklist, but once we have that, then we can really start checking a lot of this stuff off.
Yeah, to this point, we've been building ships using modified default cry engine, or I should say lumberyard stuff now. But now with the item 2.0, it's really how we've always wanted to build the ships, where the ship itself can communicate and it's networked and it's got proper optimization. So I'm most excited about finally getting there, and it's really happening right now.
Yeah.
I think they talked up all the features. Personally, I like lights. I think they look cool, and I can't wait till we can connect them all and have all the different states for just all sorts of cool stuff. Because I think it's really the visuals, what's going on, how the world feeds back to you as the player that really pulls me in anyway.
I've talked to you a lot of times about lights and about having like external lights that.
Oh yeah.
You know, like search lights that you go through an asteroid field and be able to have a light that you can that when you're doing search and rescue, looking for a ship.
About that too.
That's the kind of thing that I'm.
We're definitely gonna have that on turrets. We're gonna add like kind of like spotlights on a turret, so what you're aiming at, you can light up.
How long have I been asking? Okay. Speaking of item 2.0, it's the next question. I'm just going top to bottom. Speaking of item 2.0, can you tell us more about how things are developing, changing, improving, something interesting that impacts ships? I guess that we haven't already said.
Well, just one of the basic ones, because I also know from a lot of times just flipping through different community streamers where while they're playing the game, they're like, oh, I wonder when this bug will get fixed on this ship of getting out of your ship and having it just spin for no reason. And that's one of those sort of simple ones that we actually will be able to start really addressing and getting locked back down once we have item 2.0, because like you were sort of saying, the current setup now, if you aren't piloting your ship, and not just like, oh, I'm sitting in the co-pilot seat, it's like, no, are you in the pilot seat of your ship? Okay, cool, everything's powered on, everything has some level of awareness, you get hit, the ship will counter correct and stop its own movement. You get out of the ship, it has none of that communication, it has none of that awareness of self. So once we have the item 2.0, it's like, all right, cool, now you're allowed to auto-stabilize again, because your ship's IFCS, even when you're not in the pilot seat, it's going to say, hey, why am I spinning? I shouldn't be spinning. Thrusters, stop my spinning. And then you may come back and you've tilted from taking a hit or taking an impact, but it shouldn't just be spinning on its own and then pinball you out into nowhere if you approach the ship wrong.
Yeah. Many have been the videos of people getting out and being flung halfway across.
Oh yeah, the Freelancer is a comedic death
I
trap.
hate laughing, but it's so funny.
Yeah, you get that thing spinning on a
love video
roll,
game
it's
physics.
awesome.
It's the most random things.
Probably my most exciting, the thing that excites me the most that's happening right now is the upgrade to the turrets. And we've had a lot of problems with the gameplay of the turrets, and I'm excited. It's just saw Mark Event's new implementation. It's amazing. So I'm mostly excited about that, and I've been helping him prototype a couple things. But beyond that, optimization is going to be, and the ships are going to actually look better when we do item 2.0. And it may not be clear, but we optimize the ships by adding LODs to the ships. In a normal engine, LODs switch at a constant rate of distance. But in our engine, we have a switching rate based on the smallest average poly size of the LOD. So if you have a ship hull and it's got a little tiny poly in it, that LOD is going to switch to the next lowest LOD fast. So we spend a lot of time looking for these small polys. And then due to the old tech that we've been using, say to hook up the joysticks to a player and run IK, traditionally the joysticks have been part of the exterior of the ship. You haven't known that, but that's actually been a thing. So when we move the joysticks to Cockpit 2.0, that means the little LODs that are on these joysticks won't be influencing the LOD switching of the entire ship, which means we get a better looking ship closer up and as it switches. So it's going to be great. I'm very excited about that.
And for anyone who might not know what LODs are, those are a level of details. It's the difference between seeing every single poly of the ship when it's right up close and then watching smaller and progressively less detailed versions of it.
Yeah, modelers are ridiculous. They make these ships out of millions of polys. So LOD1 will be 500,000, and LOD2 will be 200,000. And that's
You're
kind
trying
of
to find a balance between like range and visual, loss. Like we're trying to make it so you don't see any pop. Like you're not supposed to see the model change. That's the perfect world scenario of an LOD. But after a while, when you're really just supposed to hit a certain poly count versus certain pixel space, you're like,
And that's really what it is. Every time you see something just pop in the screen, that's an LOD.
Yeah, exactly. That's usually an LOD. Or streaming could be model just appearing, whatever kind of issue. But definitely try and make those as clean as
Have you
possible.
started working on LODs for the Idris yet?
No.
no, actually,
Just get the far away stare. Oh, the Idris LODs. Yeah.
the,
I'm glad I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Now the artists are doing all their own LOD work, and we're just kind of helping implement.
We used to do a lot
it's
of
not
the
our problem
LODs, but
anymore.
it's not our problem as much.
We were LODing everything in the game for a while, and now they want to do it more by hand. We were automating the process using a software package that we had bought, and it gave good results, but you could see some weird shapes sometimes, and we wanted to, at least in the first few LODs, have a cleaner result. So they're hand done.
Hand done with a mix of automated.
And to keep on the damage states thread here, do you know if damage states will allow visual holes in the hull? Because right now it just exposes an underlayer.
That depends. I mean, it's a tech thing, really. I mean, yes, technically, you could see right through the ship, but what functionality does that imply?
If they mean a breach, like where gas will escape, right now we're limiting the breaches. We're limiting breaches to airlocks and to turrets where you can blow a turret off, and so you'll be able to go in that way, and you'll be able to like have some door gameplay where you blow open the door or the airlock. I mean. But breaches anywhere in the hull is really difficult because it's not only the outer layers that you have to deal with, it's the interior meshes in there. So in order to do that, and like I said with the Titanic example, where we spawn some geometry on its death, if I get that feature, we might be able to switch out a wall in the interior to have a hole in it that matches the exterior, but
but I mean, there's a lot to think about.
If it was the only thing we were working on, that could be something. But considering everything has to play well with everything else, there's always a resource trade-off and stuff like that. I mean, it's a cool idea. That's definitely something I think we.
When I'm doing the setup, I could definitely shoot through one side of the ship to the other. My goal is to actually stop that from happening, so you don't see anything actually going wrong, right? So I'll tell the modelers, oh, we need more damage palms here. We need more gubbins here because we should be able to shoot through there. You know what I mean? Like, but something has to stop you from seeing into the interior because they also have different lighting conditions. Like the environment probe of the outside world doesn't necessarily match the one on the inside, and there's all sorts of object containers and things going on that don't blend well together right now for actual just straight up breaching.
And we've mostly been working on small to medium ships to this point. As soon as we get into the larger ships, that could become something that we want to do. But we'll have to plan it out very specifically. It can't just happen procedurally or organically.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. We're getting a lot of questions about will you balance this ship more, will you balance that ship more? I think this is probably a good time to remind everybody that ship balance never really stops. Not in a massively multiplayer online game.
Yeah, I mean, balance is the best way I've always was taught to describe balance in any game is it is a constantly moving pendulum, and the best you can hope for is to shorten the swing arc, but you can never expect to stop the pendulum from moving. And it always needs that back and forth, and also in that same analogy of something being in an alpha, that is when you should expect and should want the swing arc to be as wide as possible, because that just means you're covering as much ground as possible, you're trying out as many different ideas as possible, you're iterating to really dial in on what is that appropriate range, so when you have the live product, what is your acceptable short swing arc of balance between, okay, this may be a bit more powerful now, but this can get bumped up later, but then that'll change something back, and you always have the back and forth, and it's just constraining that when it's appropriate to constrain it.
I think that's one of the things that can sometimes get lost for our project versus every other project out there, because everybody else is playing every other game much farther down in its development, if not in its release, but in beta or in early access or whatnot. We are still so early in our development since we're lucky enough to have a live client, so we can have far more testers than just our internal QA team does. That affords us the opportunity to try crazier things with each patch, to try bumping the speeds way up this patch, to try pulling all the speeds back, taking out crews, putting crews in. It allows us that freedom to try all these different things. What we're doing today is not necessarily 100% representative of what there will be when that day comes, when we're launched, we're live kind of thing. But it's that thing that we want to test now at this period. So
You test what you have when you haven't, and when you add something new, you retest it against everything else, and that's balance, right?
QA.
Yeah.
Try it out.
So that's one of the great advantages of this product, that everybody who plays it is a tester. You know, it's important to never lose sight that, you know, there's Evocati and there's PTU and then there's live, but our live environment is still an alpha environment. It's all Star Citizen environments are test environments, every single one. So we're going to try all kinds of stuff. All right, next question. How will ship armor work? Will it be able to deflect a projectile depending on the impact angle?
Some of that's still being worked out, just in terms of how different pierceability things happen. Now, in terms of having it deflect and then go hit another ship and do damage,
It'd be amazing.
while it would be cool, that's a little bit more unlikely, just because it's like, all right, now let's do all these extra bizarre real-time physics calculations based on angle of impact and angle of deflection. Like I would imagine, you know, Matt and Patrick would definitely be able to say better of, you know, maybe if we could get some visual facsimile in terms of just how a shot could rebound off if it doesn't meet a pierceability value, but it still would probably lose any damage after that and then just hit a very short decay cycle before it just stops being a live round in the universe.
I had a bug on the Caterpillar where bullets would bounce off of it pretty well, actually.
That was pretty funny,
yeah,
actually. And they
yeah.
would like slow down. They looked like Star Wars lasers. They just bounced off like that effect too was happening
like,
off.
pew,
Yeah.
pew, pew. Yeah, it was like all these like lightsabers flying out. And they kind of get stuck too. They'd like little,
I think if I were firing a missile at another ship, I would be thrilled if it actually hit it because I'm not that good. But then if I saw it bounce off, go somewhere else, it'd be pretty.
That'd be funny with a missile. I know, I think it can happen right now in the Caterpillar, the through and through shot, where if you are good enough and you've got someone targeted just right, you can launch a missile through the open double doors on both sides of the Caterpillar.
Yes. I remember we were passing videos around, watching the crazy things people were doing through the center of the Caterpillar. There were even a couple moments where we were like, how did that happen? And it's neat to see, like, okay, no, it's this guy's system, probably playing with the work that Matt, you know, this person did and whatnot. I guess that's what's making it able, and that's one of the best things about this. You know, we're truly making a sandbox game where we're just making the tools. We're putting the tools out there and then seeing what you guys do with it. And it's awesome when we're surprised, when we see something we didn't anticipate. I love that part.
Yeah, I love when seeing like the Merlin trying to get stuffed into each, like, you know, room or whatever on the Caterpillar or the Constellation. It's
what
hilarious.
do we have to knock off this ship to make it fit? Okay.
Yeah.
It seems the only purpose of the Merlin is to play will it fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even remember seeing one where someone was like, oh, I made the Buccaneer fit in the nose section of the Caterpillar. And then when they actually go to the image, oh yeah, it's like they made it fit by shearing off the entire right engine, both wings, just had the debris part shoved in
Make sure as many
sideways.
pieces can break
and
off
it's
as
like
possible.
tucked in, both tail flaps gone. And it's like, all right, it fit. Yeah.
I love that stuff.
All right, we got time for one more question. We have heard a lot of talk about the optimization of lights on the ship. Does making lighting more efficient free up room to add other cool visuals to ships?
Like, what other cool visuals?
I mean, we do
I would
everything
think-
cool we can think of,
yeah.
and then we rein ourselves back until it runs well.
I mean, there's
least I do.
PFX, there's lighting.
I
PFX,
think
lighting,
almost the
debris,
idea of
UV2s.
optimizing enough where we could have another cool ship in the same scene at that
That's the
same
thing, right?
you know, level
Like-
of fidelity and detailing, like getting us to the point where we can do these bigger battles where, hey, if we can get to the cap ship versus cap ship, or we're having to pare down less and less in terms of the detailing to keep both of them existing in that same screen space at the same time. Like if you're a fighter flying between that same fight, you know, there's just...
Yeah, for lighting specifically, I mean, I mentioned we were going to have these more interesting startup animations. So the back lights will come on, and then it'll kind of like raise up on the front, and the cockpit lights will come on. So it'll be kind of this orchestrated way instead of everything just kind of coming on, ooh, like a Windows, ooh, you know, kind of thing. It's going to be more, ooh, it's a more staggered thing. But one of the cool things, and I don't know what made me think of this, but it's totally not related, is I want to, we're going to look into sub-component targeting. and I'm hoping you will get this kind of X-ray view where you'll see the interior component, and it's still being designed, but we're planning for something along those lines so you can
But
pick apart.
even if we didn't know it, that would be a benefit to people who know the ships. You know,
Yeah.
you could take it upon yourself to learn the interior layout of as many ships as possible,
Oh, yeah.
so you know where the components are physically on that constellation or on that javelin or whatever. So you know your own personal knowledge can benefit you to how well you can disable a ship.
Absolutely,
Yeah, doing that legwork should definitely yield you an advantage, because it's like, if you put the time into it, there should definitely be a reward for those kinds of things.
And we've talked about different scanners, and we'll probably upgrade scanners, and the best scanner in the world will be able to look really into the ship and pick it apart, and you'll find like the resources that you can harvest. But the basic scanner is just going to be ship. Can't see anything.
All right. So the best scanner can see that the crew's all in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, that about does it for this edition of the Happy Hour interview. Is there anything you want to say to the Star Citizen community before we let you go?
No. Thanks for supporting us.
Yeah, guys, thanks a bunch for playing.
So I like talking to everybody on Reddit and Facebook and Twitch and in Spectrum. So thank you for being cool people and a great community. So I always have fun.
All right, well, there was a sentiment that was passed on here. It says, not a question. It says, you are all doing incredible work. It seems the ship pipeline has really been defined. Keep being awesome.
Sweet.
So I'm going to take
very
that
much.
as a comment to me, not them.
thank
So
you.
thank you. So for Happy Hour interview, thank you to Matt, thank you to Matt, thank you to Pat, and thank you to Tyler Wicken for helping me out so I didn't have to look at this thing the entire time, just taking your questions and feeding them to me. It's so good. So thank you to everybody involved. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Later. See you in the verse.